What exactly do you think you are doing?
Eleanor, he was hungry.
I heard you.
It's just food.
No, Claire, it is never just anything with you. Pack your things.
What?
Finally.
Eleanor, please, where am I supposed to go?
That is not my problem anymore.
After 10 years, after everything.
You can go with him, since you care so much about him. Congratulations, she is yours.
What? Oh my goodness, she is actually giving herself away to a stranger.
Please, can I ask for a favor? Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Your support means a lot and helps us bring you more exciting and heartfelt stories. Thank you. Now, let's dive into the story. The storm that night did not just flood Willow Creek. It exposed the hearts of the people who lived there. Behind the gates of the town's wealthiest neighborhood stood a stranger with soaked clothes, worn-out shoes, and everything he owned inside a small plastic bag. He came looking for food. Instead, he found the one person who still knew how to see beyond appearances. The rain came down relentlessly. Thunder shook the sky. The beautiful houses that normally represented comfort and security suddenly looked powerless against the force of nature. And beneath the porch light of one of those magnificent homes stood a man who looked like he had nowhere else to go. His clothes were soaked through. Water dripped from his hair onto his tired face. His shoes were old and damaged, one of them beginning to separate at the sole. In his hand was a small plastic bag containing the few belongings he carried. He did not look dangerous or demanding, or like someone searching for attention. He simply looked exhausted. He stood quietly beneath that porch light, almost invisible against the darkness of the storm, and he did not knock aggressively or demand help or ask for money. He simply waited. When the front door finally opened, he lowered his eyes respectfully. "Excuse me," he said softly. "I am sorry to bother you." Standing in front of him was Claire Whitmore. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Claire studied him carefully. Not his soaked clothes, not his worn-out shoes, not the things most people would have used to decide who he was in an instant. She looked at him like he was a person. "Is there anything I can help you with?" she asked. The stranger hesitated. He had already seen enough rejection that night. Doors closing, eyes avoiding his, people walking past as if he did not exist. But Claire did not look away. "I am not asking for money," he said quietly, his voice gentle. "I have not eaten today." Something shifted in Claire's expression. She understood that feeling, not only the hunger, but the deeper ache of being invisible, of standing somewhere and having people look through you instead of at you. For 10 years, she had lived in a house where she had a room, but never truly felt she belonged. Without another word, she stepped back. "Wait here." The stranger looked surprised. A few minutes later, Claire returned with a plate of food. Nothing extravagant, just what remained from dinner. Some chicken, a piece of bread, a glass of water. When she handed it to him, he looked at it as though she had offered him something priceless. "Thank you," he whispered. Claire smiled softly. "You don't have to thank me." She paused. "Everyone deserves to eat." The stranger studied her for a long moment. There was something rare about her. She had every reason to have grown bitter, yet she remained kind. She had every reason to turn away from suffering, yet she had stopped. He wondered how someone who had clearly known so much pain could still carry so much compassion. Those words stayed with Daniel Carter, though Claire did not know his name, did not know that the man standing before her was a billionaire, a visionary, one of the most influential business leaders in the country. A man who had everything the world could offer except the one thing he wanted most. Someone who cared about him for who he truly was. In that moment, none of that mattered. He was simply a tired stranger, discovering kindness when he least expected it. Before he could say anything else, another voice cut through the storm, a voice thick with anger. "What exactly do you think you are doing?"
What exactly do you think you are doing?
Eleanor, he was hungry.
I heard you.
It's just food.
No, Claire, it is never just anything with you.
Claire froze. She knew that voice. Slowly, she turned around. Eleanor Hayes stood in the doorway, her expression cold, with Vanessa, Eleanor's daughter, just behind her. Vanessa was dressed perfectly, despite the storm outside, her hair neat, her clothes expensive, her face showing exactly what she thought of the stranger on their porch. Disgust. "Eleanor," Claire said quietly, "he was hungry." "I heard you. It's just food." "No," the word came sharply. "No, Claire, it is never just anything with you." Claire lowered her eyes. She knew that tone well. For years, she had learned that Eleanor's anger was rarely about the situation in front of her. It was about everything Eleanor believed Claire represented. A responsibility, a reminder, a burden she had never wanted. "He is leaving," Eleanor said. Claire looked back at the stranger. "He has nowhere to go." Eleanor's face stayed cold. "That is not my problem." The stranger slowly lowered the plate. "I can leave," but Claire shook her head. "No," she looked at him. "You don't have to apologize for being hungry." The word struck Daniel hard, because he had spent years surrounded by people who knew his name but rarely cared about him. And this woman, who knew nothing about him, had shown him more humanity than most people who claimed to. Eleanor stepped forward. "I have had enough of you." Claire looked confused. "Enough of what?" "Enough of your attitude. Enough of you acting like you are better than everyone else because you help people. Enough of you making this house uncomfortable." Claire stared at her, and suddenly 10 years of memories came rushing back. Her mother had died when she was 16. 3 years later, her father married Eleanor Hayes. At first, Claire believed things would get easier. She was wrong. Slowly, she learned the truth. In Eleanor's home, Vanessa always came first. Vanessa received the best opportunities, the best education, the encouragement Claire had secretly wished for, while Claire received only reminders to be grateful for whatever she had. Her father had tried to protect her while he was alive. Small acts of kindness, quiet support. But when Claire was 21, he died suddenly, and with him went the only person who truly saw her. After that, Claire became invisible. The one who cleaned, the one who cooked, the one everyone depended on but no one appreciated. And now, because she had offered food to a hungry stranger, everything finally broke. Eleanor looked at her.
Since you care so much about him, congratulations, she is yours.
What? Oh my goodness, she is actually giving herself away to a stranger.
Something inside Claire broke quietly, without drama, like a piece of glass falling apart. She looked at Eleanor one last time. "Eleanor, please." The anger had drained from her voice. Only pain remained. "Where am I supposed to go?" The room went silent. Vanessa looked away, but Eleanor did not soften. "That is not my problem anymore." Claire stared at her. "After 10 years, no answer. After everything I have done for this family," Eleanor sighed, "you always make everything about yourself." Those words hurt more than the rain outside. Then Eleanor's gaze shifted to the stranger and back to Claire. "Since you care so much about him," she said, stepping aside, Maybe you can go with him." Claire stared. "What?" Eleanor's voice was cold. "Congratulations." A pause. "She is yours." The stranger looked shocked. Something inside Claire collapsed. Not because Eleanor wanted her gone, but because she could say it so easily, as if 10 years meant nothing. As if Claire were not family, but simply something that could be handed away. Vanessa let out a small laugh. "Oh my goodness, she is actually giving herself away to a stranger." Claire looked at her, and for the first time felt no anger at all, only sadness, because she finally understood. She had spent years trying to earn love from people who had already decided not to give it. She stood there a moment longer while the rain kept falling heavily outside, though somehow the silence inside the house felt louder. She looked at Eleanor, then at Vanessa, and waited. Not for an apology, not even for kindness, just for someone to realize what they were doing, for someone to say, "Claire, wait." But nobody did. Nobody moved. Nobody called her name, and that hurt more than anything. Slowly, Claire turned and walked upstairs, each step heavier than the last. She entered the small room she had lived in for 10 years, and though she had stayed there so long, she knew the truth. It had never really been her home. The room was simple: a small bed, a wooden table, a few books, a closet of carefully folded clothes, and a small framed picture of her father beside the bed. When Claire picked it up, the sight of his face broke through the wall she had built around her emotions. He was the one person who had always made her feel loved, the one person who had never made her feel like a burden. "I wish you were here," she whispered, and a tear rolled down her cheek. She wondered what he would have done. Would he have defended her? Stopped Eleanor? Reminded her that she was worth fighting for? For a moment she let herself cry. Then she wiped her face, because after 10 years of surviving, she had learned something painful. Sometimes the people you hope will save you are the ones who let you fall. She opened her closet and packed only what belonged to her. A few dresses, some personal belongings, her father's picture. Nothing more. Her entire life fit inside one suitcase. When she closed it, she stared at it for a moment. 10 years, reduced to one suitcase. She lifted it and walked downstairs. The house looked exactly the same. The expensive furniture, the beautiful decorations, the perfect image of a happy family. But Claire knew better now. A beautiful house could still be a lonely place. She stopped at the doorway. "Eleanor." Her stepmother looked up briefly. Claire waited, thinking, maybe this was the moment. Maybe Eleanor would finally see her. Maybe she would say something. But Eleanor simply looked away, and Vanessa did not even lift her eyes from her phone. Claire nodded slowly, opened the door, and let the cold rain touch her face as she stepped outside. The door closed behind her. The stranger remained near the porch, watching Claire walk into the storm with her suitcase, and something inside him tightened. He knew the feeling well, not the loss of a house or the loss of comfort, but the feeling of being surrounded by people and still completely alone. Claire walked several streets before her strength finally gave out. She stopped beneath a small roadside shelter, and the suitcase slipped from her hand as she sat down. After holding everything inside for years, she finally cried. Not because she had lost a house, not because she had nowhere to sleep, but because she realized she had spent 10 years trying to earn love from people who had already decided not to give it. The stranger approached slowly and sat beside her. He did not speak or offer empty words. He simply stayed. Minutes passed before Claire finally whispered, "You don't have to sit here." "I know." She looked at him. "Then why are you here?" Daniel met her eyes. "Because tonight you gave food to someone you thought had nothing." He paused. "But you were the one who had been starving for kindness all along." Claire looked away as a tear moved down her face. Nobody had ever described her that way before, not even she herself had. For the first time in years, someone had truly seen her, not her mistakes, not her position in the house, not what she could do for them, just her. And that night, Daniel Carter made a decision. He would help this woman, not because she was helpless, but because she reminded him that goodness still existed in the world. Daniel Carter had enough money to buy almost anything, but money had never bought him the one thing he wanted most, something genuine, something real. For years, he had built Carter Industries into a global success, the small business his father started, grown into a powerful organization with thousands of employees, spanning technology, infrastructure, investment, and development projects. His decisions shaped entire industries, and his name was respected around the world. People called him brilliant, a visionary, a billionaire who had built an empire. But behind that success was a man grown tired. Tired of being valued only for what he owned. Tired of conversations that were really negotiations. Tired of wondering whether people cared about Daniel Carter, or only the life attached to his name. He had everything except someone who could see him without the wealth, the title, the power. Just him. Months before that rainy night, Daniel had first noticed Claire. He did not know her name and had never spoken to her, but every morning his driver, Walt, passed through Willow Creek on the way to Carter Industries. Daniel was usually buried in emails, calls, meetings, reports, but somewhere along that route, he began noticing the same young woman outside the Hayes residence, always awake by 6:15, already working, sweeping the courtyard, tending the plants, preparing the house before anyone else woke. What fascinated him was not the work itself, but her bearing. She never looked angry or defeated. She carried herself with a quiet dignity, unaware that anyone was watching, not trying to impress anyone, simply doing what needed to be done. In a world where everything felt calculated, Claire seemed genuine. Then one morning, she was gone. At first he thought nothing of it. Maybe she was sick. Maybe she had the day off. But the days passed and the courtyard stayed empty, and he found himself looking toward the house every morning. "Walt," the driver glanced back. "Yes, sir?" "Slow down here." Walt glanced toward the empty courtyard. "Everything okay?" Daniel looked away. "I just want to check something." But there was nothing to see, no Claire, no quiet figure moving through the morning light. What Daniel did not know was that Eleanor had punished her, restricting her movements, reminding her once again that even small freedoms could be taken away. He never learned this. He only knew that someone who had unknowingly brought peace to his mornings had disappeared. That night, after another exhausting day, Daniel decided he wanted to disappear too. Not forever, just for a few hours. He wanted to know what people saw when there was nothing impressive about him. No expensive watch, no designer suit, no assistant, no luxury vehicle, no famous name. Only a man. He stopped at an old antique shop and bought worn clothes, a battered jacket, damaged boots, a simple bag. Back in his car, he changed, messed up his hair, and stripped away everything that represented Daniel Carter. When he looked in the mirror, the billionaire was gone. Standing there instead was an ordinary stranger, someone people might ignore or avoid, exactly what he wanted. He parked his car far from Willow Creek and walked the rest of the way, carrying nothing but a small plastic bag. He did not know her name or her story, but when she opened that door, she saw him. Not his clothes, not his appearance, not his circumstances, but a person. And Daniel knew immediately she was different. After sitting with Claire beneath the roadside shelter, Daniel helped her find a nearby motel. She looked uneasy. "I cannot afford this." "I know." "Then why are you doing it?" Daniel smiled. "Maybe tonight we helped each other." "You don't even know me." "I know enough." "Enough?" "Enough to know that someone who is suffering can still think about another person's hunger." Claire lowered her eyes. Nobody had ever described her that way. The motel was small, nothing like the luxury hotels Daniel was used to, but it was safe, and tonight, safe was enough. Before leaving, he handed her the key. "Get some rest." She hesitated. "What about you?" "I will be fine." "You don't even have a place to sleep." He smiled. "I have survived worse nights." And that was true. He had survived business battles, pressure, loneliness, disappointment. But this night felt different, because for the first time in years, he felt hope. The next morning, Claire woke before her alarm, and for a few seconds, she forgot where she was. The unfamiliar ceiling, the unfamiliar room, the quiet rain tapping the window. Then reality returned. The house, Eleanor's words, the suitcase, the storm. Her heart sank. For 10 years she had woken in the same room. Even on the worst days she had known where she belonged. Now everything had changed overnight. She sat on the edge of the bed and looked around the small room. It was not beautiful or luxurious, but for the first time in a long time, nobody could tell her she did not deserve to be there. Nobody could make her feel like a burden. A knock came at the door. Claire froze, then walked over slowly and opened it to find Daniel standing there holding breakfast. She stared. "You came back," he smiled. "I told you I would check on you." People usually say things like that and forget. Then people should keep their promises. Something about that answer touched her, because she had spent years hearing words that meant nothing, promises that vanished, kindness with conditions. But this stranger had shown up. "Thank you," she said softly. He handed her the food. "Eat first," she smiled slightly. "You always give orders?" "Only when people refuse to take care of themselves." For the first time in days, Claire laughed. Small, but Daniel noticed. They sat outside the motel room and ate breakfast together. The conversation simple. Nothing about money, status, or what either of them could gain from the other. Just two people talking. Claire learned that he worked in business, traveled often, and spent most of his time solving problems. Daniel learned about her love for books, her dream of working in a professional environment, her desire to build something meaningful. "You wanted to work before?" he asked. She nodded. "I always did." "What stopped you?" She looked down. Life. Daniel understood. Sometimes life did not destroy a person's dreams all at once. Sometimes it slowly convinced them they were not allowed to dream at all. Over the following days, Daniel kept visiting, not out of pity, but because he genuinely enjoyed her company. Every conversation revealed something new. She was intelligent, observant, understood people, could organize chaos and solve problems calmly. Daniel had spent years surrounded by talented people, but Claire had something many of them lacked: character. One afternoon, he sat across from her. "Claire," she looked up. "Yes?" "I want to offer you a job." She blinked. "A job?" "Yes," she laughed nervously. "Doing what?" "Working at my company." "You still don't know everything about me." "I know enough." "You keep saying that." "Because it's true." She turned serious. "Daniel, I don't want someone helping me because they feel sorry for me." His expression shifted. "I don't feel sorry for you. I respect you." Those words surprised her. Respect, something she had not felt in a long time. "What kind of position?" "Project coordination, to start." She hesitated. "I have never worked in a company like yours." "Neither has anyone on their first day." "What if I fail?" "Then you learn." "What if I'm not good enough?" He looked at her steadily. "Claire, someone who keeps their kindness after being hurt is already stronger than most people I have met." She looked away, fighting tears, and finally nodded. "Okay." That one word changed everything. 2 days later, Claire walked into Carter Industries with no idea what she was stepping into. The building seemed endless, glass walls reaching toward the sky, employees moving quickly through the lobby, executives discussing projects, screens displaying data everywhere. Everything spoke of success. She stood there quietly, and Daniel noticed her expression. "Nervous?" "A little." "Good. Good. It means you understand the opportunity." He smiled. "But remember something. You were kind before you knew who I was. Never lose that." The first surprise came when he introduced her. "Everyone, this is Claire Whitmore." People greeted her politely, though some wondered why the CEO had personally brought a newcomer into the company. Daniel noticed the curiosity and addressed it directly. "Claire will be joining the development team." He looked around the room. "She is here because she earned an opportunity, not because she helped me, not because I felt sorry for her. An opportunity." Claire began as a project coordination assistant, and the start was not easy. Corporate life felt foreign. Meetings moved quickly. People spoke in numbers. Decisions affected hundreds of employees. There were moments she doubted herself, but every time she felt overwhelmed, she remembered something Daniel had told her. "You do not have to know everything today. You just have to be willing to learn." So she learned, studying after hours, asking questions, listening carefully. And slowly people noticed, not because she was the CEO's friend, but because she was good. One afternoon, she noticed a problem within one of the company's projects. Departments blaming each other. The project delayed. Managers frustrated. Everyone explaining why it was not their fault. Claire quietly reviewed the reports and requested a meeting. Several senior employees looked surprised. She was one of the newest people in the room. But when she spoke, everyone listened. "The problem is not that people are unwilling to work," she said, pointing at the reports. "The problem is that communication has broken down." She proposed a new coordination approach. Clear responsibilities, weekly updates, better communication between teams. Some doubted it, but Daniel approved the plan, and within weeks the project improved. The same employees who had once questioned her began asking for her advice. Months passed, and Claire kept growing, attending leadership sessions, learning corporate strategy, managing bigger responsibilities. But she never changed at heart. She still greeted the cleaners, still listened to junior employees, still treated everyone with respect. Daniel watched quietly. He had opened a door, but Claire was the one walking through it. A year later, Claire was invited to a board meeting. She assumed it was just another presentation and prepared carefully, reviewing every detail. On the day, she entered the executive boardroom, where the most senior people at Carter Industries were waiting. She felt nervous, and Daniel noticed. "You are ready. What if I make mistakes? Then you make them, and you learn." She smiled, and the meeting began. Claire presented a major company strategy. The board listened carefully, asked questions, and she answered with confidence. When she finished, the room fell silent. Then the chairman smiled. "Excellent work." Applause filled the room. Daniel stood. "Before we close, I have an announcement." Claire looked at him. Effective today, Claire Whitmore will become the Executive Director of Strategic Development. She froze. "What?" He smiled. "This position is not a gift." He looked around the room. "It is earned. Claire has shown leadership, intelligence, and something this company needs more of, integrity." The board applauded, and Claire felt tears rise. A year earlier, she had stood in the rain with a suitcase. Now she stood in a room where decisions shaped the future. Not because someone had rescued her, but because someone had believed in her, and she had come to believe in herself. After that promotion, something unexpected happened. People stopped seeing her as the woman Daniel Carter had helped, and started seeing her as the woman who had helped Carter Industries grow. She had earned respect on her own terms, not because of her title or her connection to Daniel, but because of who she was, exactly what Daniel had wanted all along. He never wanted her to depend on him. He wanted her to discover what he had already seen from the start. She was capable. She was brilliant. She belonged. Their relationship shifted slowly, neither of them planning it or expecting it. A conversation after a late meeting, a shared laugh on a stressful day, a quiet dinner once everyone else had gone home. Daniel had long believed love was complicated. He had seen relationships built on status and advantage. But with Claire, everything felt different. She did not care about his wealth or his reputation. She cared whether he had eaten lunch, whether he was sleeping enough, whether he was carrying too much on his shoulders. One evening, Daniel arrived at the office late and found Claire still there, reviewing documents. He looked surprised. "You are still working?" She glanced up. "You are asking me that?" "Fair point." She closed the file. "You know, for someone who runs a company, you are terrible at taking care of yourself." "Is that a professional assessment?" "No," she smiled. "It is a human assessment." Daniel laughed and realized Claire was one of the few people in the world who could speak to him that way, not because she was fearless, but because she cared. Their first official dinner was not at an expensive restaurant. Daniel wanted somewhere simple and quiet, somewhere they could talk without cameras or business or interruptions. Claire looked around the small restaurant. "You brought me here." "Yes." "I thought billionaires only went to places with private rooms and 10-course meals." "Sometimes billionaires want normal food." "That is the first normal thing I have heard you say." They talked for hours, childhood, dreams, fears, the future. Daniel told her things he had rarely shared with anyone, about loneliness, about the pressure of always appearing strong. Claire listened, not as an employee, not as someone dazzled by his success, but as someone who cared. Their relationship became something beautiful. They walked through the city together, visited small cafes, watched movies at home, laughed about things nobody else understood. One evening, Claire discovered Daniel was terrible at cooking. She walked into his kitchen and found him staring helplessly at a recipe, ingredients scattered everywhere. "Are you okay?" "I am trying to prepare dinner," he said seriously. She looked around the wreckage of the kitchen. "Did dinner fight back?" He looked offended. "I am following instructions." She picked up the recipe. "Daniel?" "Yes?" "You read the dessert instructions first." He studied the page, then quietly turned it around. Claire laughed. "You manage a global company, but a recipe defeated you." "Apparently, this is my greatest challenge." Those small moments became precious, because Claire saw the man behind the billionaire, and Daniel saw the woman behind the pain. Months later, Daniel planned something special, telling Claire they were attending a business event near the coast. But when they arrived, she realized he had lied. There was no event, no executives, no presentations, only the ocean, a beautiful sunset, and a private picnic prepared near the shore. "You planned this?" "Yes." He looked toward the water. "Because I wanted one day where nobody needed anything from us." That answer touched her. They walked along the beach as the waves moved gently around their feet and the sky turned gold. Claire smiled. "I still think about that night." "The storm?" She nodded. "I thought my life had ended." She looked at him. But somehow it was the beginning. Daniel stopped walking. "Claire." She turned and he looked nervous. A strange sight, this man who could stand before hundreds of executives without hesitation, now suddenly uncertain. "I have spent my whole life building things." He reached into his pocket. "Companies, projects, an empire." He smiled. "But the most important thing I have ever found was never something I built." Claire's eyes filled with emotion as Daniel lowered himself to one knee, the sound of the ocean surrounding them. "Claire Whitmore," he opened the ring box. "Will you marry me?" For a moment, she could not speak. The woman who had once walked into the rain, believing nobody wanted her now, stood before someone who had chosen her completely. Tears filled her eyes. "Yes." Daniel stood, and she wrapped her arms around him. They kissed, and for the first time, both of them knew they had found home. Their wedding became one of the most beautiful events Willow Creek had ever seen. Everyone expected a billionaire's wedding, something extravagant, designed to impress the world. But Daniel wanted something meaningful instead. The ceremony was held beside the ocean, the same place where he had asked her to marry him. White flowers decorated the shore, soft music drifted through the air, and waves moved gently behind them. When Claire walked toward him, Daniel forgot everything else: the company, the meetings, the world watching. He saw only her, the woman who had changed his life. When she reached him, he smiled. "You know something?" "What?" "I still remember the first time we met." "You mean when you were pretending to be homeless?" He laughed. "Yes. You were not very convincing." "Excuse me?" "You looked too calm." The guests laughed. Daniel shook his head. "I was trying." "You were failing." For the first time, Daniel Carter laughed, without caring whether he appeared perfect. They exchanged vows: love, respect, patience, and choosing each other every day. And when they kissed, everyone celebrated. Marriage did not change them. It made them stronger. Daniel remained the successful CEO everyone respected, and Claire continued leading at Carter Industries. But their favorite moments happened away from the spotlight. Quiet mornings, long conversations, small jokes, simple happiness. One Saturday morning, Claire walked into the kitchen and stopped. Daniel stood there in an apron, flour covering the counter, a pan smoking faintly, something in the air smelling suspicious. What happened? He looked proud. I made breakfast. She glanced around. The kitchen looks like it survived a battle. Breakfast was more challenging than expected, he said seriously. She laughed so hard she had to hold the counter. The billionaire CEO of Carter Industries lost a fight against eggs. I prefer to say the eggs were very determined. And Daniel realized this was the life he had always wanted, not the wealth, not the success, this. 2 years after their wedding, their greatest blessing arrived, a son. When Daniel held him for the first time, the world went quiet. The man who had faced investors, competitors, and impossible decisions without fear suddenly found himself overwhelmed. Claire watched him. You are crying. He smiled through tears. I have signed billion-dollar contracts without shaking. He looked down at the baby. But this little person has completely defeated me. Claire laughed. Their son became the center of their world, and Daniel made a promise. His child would grow up knowing what Claire had taught him, that every person mattered, that kindness was never weakness, and that the greatest things in life could never be bought. While Claire's life had transformed into something she once thought impossible, Vanessa's journey was only beginning. For years, she had believed success meant appearance, achievement, being admired. She wanted people to respect her, wanted a powerful position, wanted to prove she was better than everyone else. But there was one thing she had never learned. The thing Claire had understood since childhood. A person's true character is revealed by how they treat people who can do nothing for them. After Claire left the Hayes home, Vanessa continued building her career. She studied, worked hard, sharpened her skills, and from the outside, she looked successful. But something was missing inside. She had spent years looking down on people she considered less fortunate, had watched Claire serve others and thought it foolish, had mistaken kindness for weakness, until one opportunity forced her to confront who she really was. The position was everything Vanessa had dreamed of. A senior leadership role at a prestigious organization, one that could change her future. She prepared for weeks, researched the company, studied its executives, practiced her answers, bought a new professional outfit. On the morning of the interview, she arrived early. The corporate headquarters stood tall before her, glass walls catching the morning sun, employees walking through the entrance with confidence. "This is my chance," she whispered. As she approached, she noticed an elderly woman sitting outside, her clothes old, her shoes worn, a small bag in her hands. The woman looked up. "Excuse me," Vanessa stopped. "Yes? I'm sorry to bother you. Could you please help me?" Vanessa checked her watch. She still had time, but her mind was elsewhere. "I am sorry, I have an interview. It will only take a minute. I really cannot." The woman lowered her eyes. "Of course." Vanessa walked into the building and never looked back, never knowing that moment would define her future. Inside, she was confident, speaking about leadership, strategy, experience, while the panel listened carefully. Then the woman at the center of the room, the CEO, looked at her. "Vanessa, before you entered this building today, did you meet anyone outside?" Vanessa paused. "Anyone outside?" "Yes." Slowly she remembered the elderly woman, and her expression changed. The CEO watched her carefully. "What did you do?" "I was coming for an interview." "And the woman?" Vanessa looked down. She already knew. The CEO leaned back. "That was your interview." Vanessa froze. "What?" "The woman outside was me." Silence filled the room. The CEO continued. We wanted to understand the character of the person who would represent this organization. Skills can be developed, knowledge can be improved, experience can be gained, but compassion cannot be forced. The words hit Vanessa hard because she knew she had failed not for lack of intelligence or qualifications, but because in one unguarded moment she had revealed who she truly was. When the rejection email arrived later that day, Vanessa sat alone in her car, staring at the message, but she was not crying because she had lost the job. She was crying because she finally understood. Her mind drifted back years, the storm, the porch, the stranger standing outside, Claire carrying a plate of food, saying, "Everyone deserves to eat." She remembered laughing, judging, standing beside Eleanor while Claire walked into the rain. For years she had thought Claire weak. Now she understood. Claire had possessed something Vanessa had spent her whole life searching for: true strength. Vanessa covered her face. "If I had another chance," her voice broke, "I would never treat people that way again." For the first time, she blamed no one else. She accepted that she needed to change. That same afternoon, Claire and Daniel visited Eleanor at the hospital. Age and life had softened her. The woman who once believed control was strength had spent years replaying the pain she caused. She had lost the closeness she once had with Claire, lost the warmth of family, and had finally come to understand that a person could have a beautiful home and still create a place where nobody felt loved. When the hospital door opened, Eleanor looked up and froze. There stood Claire, but not the Claire she remembered. This Claire carried confidence, peace, and grace. She was elegant, yet humble, successful, yet kind. Beside her stood Daniel, the man from the storm, the stranger Eleanor had once dismissed and judged without knowing anything about him. Eleanor's eyes widened. "No." Daniel looked at her gently. "Yes." Her voice trembled. "You were him." Claire nodded. "The man from that night." Eleanor looked between them, and suddenly everything became clear. Claire had seen him before his wealth, before his success, before his name, had shown kindness when she had nothing to gain. Eleanor had done the opposite. She had judged him for what she assumed he was. Her eyes filled with tears. "I was wrong." Claire stepped closer. Eleanor looked at her. "I spent years believing that being strong meant never needing anyone." Her voice broke. "I thought kindness made people weak." She wiped her tears. "But I was wrong." She looked at Claire. "You were the strongest person in that house." Claire said nothing. Eleanor continued. "I hurt you. I made you feel unwanted. I treated you like you were a burden." A tear slid down her face. "I am sorry." The room went quiet. Then Claire reached for her hand. "I forgave you a long time ago." "How?" Claire smiled gently. "Because I didn't want my pain to control the rest of my life." Eleanor cried, and for the first time in many years, they embraced. Not because the past had disappeared or what happened was forgotten, but because forgiveness allowed them to finally heal. Moments later, the hospital door opened again, and Vanessa walked in. She stopped short at the sight of Claire, Daniel, and Eleanor together. Then her eyes met Daniel's, and she froze. The memory returned instantly. The rain, the porch, the stranger, the man she had looked down on. Daniel watched her quietly. "You remember me?" Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. "You..." Her voice shook. "You were the man." He nodded. Vanessa covered her mouth, all the pride she had carried for years disappearing. She walked slowly toward Claire, then fell to her knees. "I am sorry," Claire moved toward her immediately. "Vanessa!" "No," Vanessa cried. "Please." She looked at Claire. "I spent years thinking kindness was weakness. I thought you were foolish for helping people." Her voice broke. "But I was wrong. You were the strongest person I ever knew. I hurt you. I treated you like you were nothing. And you still became someone who helped me without even knowing I needed it." Claire helped her stand. "We all make mistakes. But not everyone learns from them," Claire smiled. "And you are learning." Several weeks after that reunion at the hospital, Vanessa began seeing her life differently for the first time in years. She no longer judged people by their clothes, their jobs, their social standing, their usefulness. She started seeing people the way Claire always had, as human beings. She volunteered at community programs, listened more, apologized when she was wrong, and learned that humility did not make a person smaller. It made them better. But one thing still troubled her: her career. The failed interview had changed her, yet she still wondered whether she would get another chance. She had spent years building her professional life, and now she finally understood the kind of leader she wanted to become. She just did not know where to begin again. One afternoon, her phone rang. She looked at the screen. Daniel Carter. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello? Vanessa." "Yes, Daniel." There was a calmness in his voice. "I heard about your interview." She looked down. "I failed." He was quiet for a moment. "No. No? You learned." The words caught her off guard. "Sometimes failure is not the end of an opportunity," he continued. "Sometimes it is the beginning of becoming someone better." Vanessa held the phone quietly. Then Daniel said something she never expected. "I spoke with one of the companies under Carter Industries." Her eyes widened. "What?" "They are looking for someone with your experience." She fell silent. "Daniel, I recommended you for the position." A tear rolled down her face. She struggled to understand. "Why would you do that?" There was a pause, then his answer. "Because someone once gave me a chance when they had no reason to." Vanessa knew exactly what he meant. The rainy night, the stranger, Claire. Daniel continued. "Everyone deserves the opportunity to become better." Vanessa covered her face, crying this time because someone believed in her. Months later, Vanessa started her new role. Different this time. She did not enter demanding respect. She earned it, treating employees with dignity, listening before speaking, remembering the lesson that had changed her life. A person's character is revealed when nobody is watching. Slowly, people noticed, not because she was perfect, but because she was changing. Meanwhile, Claire and Daniel continued building their life together. Carter Industries kept growing, and Daniel made sure the company reflected the values Claire had taught him. That success was measured not only by profit, but by impact, by people, by lives improved. Claire became one of the most respected leaders in the organization, admired not because she was married to Daniel, but because she cared. She remembered what it felt like to be invisible, and she made sure nobody around her ever felt that way. Years later, the Carter family gathered for a holiday celebration. The house filled with laughter, soft music, and the smell of good food. For Claire, it was almost impossible to believe how far life had carried her. There had been a night when she stood outside in the rain with a suitcase, believing her story was ending. Now she was surrounded by people she loved. Daniel walked into the room carrying their son, who had Daniel's curiosity and Claire's gentle heart. Careful, she said. He is getting heavy. I know, Daniel sighed dramatically. I created a human being who is stronger than my entire executive team. Claire laughed. You run a company with thousands of employees, but one child defeats you every day. That is accurate, he said seriously. Their son ran toward Claire, holding a drawing. Mom, Dad, look what I made. Daniel took the paper and studied it. A picture of their family, everyone holding hands. This is beautiful, he said, and the boy beamed with pride. Then Daniel pointed at the drawing. But why did you draw everyone holding hands? The boy looked at him as though the answer were obvious. Because nobody should feel alone. For a moment, Daniel and Claire looked at each other without speaking, because they both remembered the storm, the porch, the stranger, the woman who had offered kindness when she had nothing. Daniel pulled his son closer. You know something? What? Your picture is better than anything I have ever built. Claire smiled. Later that evening, they stood outside watching the sunset, the same way they had years before on that beach. Daniel held her hand. Do you ever think about that night? The storm? Yes. She looked toward the house, at their family, at everything they had built. Sometimes. What do you think about? She smiled. I think about how one small act of kindness changed everything. No, he said. No? He squeezed her hand. I think one person with a good heart changed everything. Claire leaned against him, and for a moment, neither of them needed to say anything, because they both understood. The greatest wealth was never money. It was not the company, not the houses, not the success people saw from the outside. The greatest wealth was love. It was forgiveness. It was second chances. And it was the kindness shown when nobody was watching. If you enjoyed this love story, please like, comment, and subscribe to see more heartfelt tales. Your support helps us continue creating the stories that make your heart race.